that's really what I got from most of the traditional doctors was there's nothing you can do. There's no cure. There's no real treatment other than just let's take more medicine, try a different medicine, take more of that, and then try a different medicine and take more of that.
It's all in your head. You don't look sick. Your tests are normal. It's probably anxiety. There's nothing wrong with you. Have you heard these words from physicians, family, and friends? If you're someone who has been struggling and swirling through the revolving door of healthcare to find answers about your health, or if you know someone who is going through this experience, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast with Laura Noziga, a show dedicated to exploring the challenges of living with undiagnosed or rare medical conditions. This podcast explores both sides of the bedside. We will be speaking with patients who have had challenges with finding a diagnosis, along with experts in the field. I'm your host, Laura Noziga. Please note I am not a medical professional, nor am I affiliated with any healthcare, pharmaceutical, or device company. I am an entrepreneur, and I am an independent market researcher focused on helping healthcare organizations better understand the patient perspective. The podcast is not meant to offer medical advice, but to merely share the stories and perspectives of podcast guests. Hello, and welcome to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. I'm your host, Laura Noziga, and today, we are with Susie Day. Let me just be very clear about that, and which is the most adorable name. And Susie has so much to tell us today about her experience with her journey and with rheumatoid arthritis and in her diagnostic journey, but also what she did with all of that. And as we like to talk about making your mess your message, she did more than that. But let me tell you a little bit about Susie before we get to talking with her. So Susie has been on a self-care journey for 15 years plus. That's been since she entered midlife and was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune condition. She mentors women in midlife that deal with autoimmune conditions, and by sharing simple everyday practices to help balance their physical and emotional well-being with less pain and more energy, so they get back on to living their lives. Susie is certified in aromatherapy, energy medicine, gut health, skincare formulation, and personal experience, and currently working on attaining certification as a transpersonal energy healing practitioner. Susie is so bored and has nothing to do. Thanks so much for being with me today with your busy life.
Oh, thank you, Laura. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell me a little bit about what you're doing currently, and then we'll kind of back into how you came to becoming what you are titling your current state of your life as an autoimmune mentor, which is so cool. And tell me about what that is.
Well, with all of my many years of living with autoimmune, I've picked up a lot of tips and tricks to feel better and solid foundational applications. So now I want to be able to share that with other women in midlife that are dealing with autoimmune conditions, just so they can feel better in their bodies and not have the limitations of what autoimmune can bring you. More excess tiredness, excess pain, excess limitations with either food or going out or whatever it is. It's different for everybody. But to be able to show them and teach them simple everyday practices that they can feel, so they can feel better in their bodies, so they can get on with living their life to their fullest in midlife and just be happy again.
So why the focus on women in midlife?
Well, I guess because I'm in midlife and I don't know, it just felt like the right thing to narrow down. They're always saying narrow down, narrow down. So I thought, well, I'll narrow down to women my age so we can relate to each other better, I suppose. But if anybody came to me with autoimmune issues, younger or older, I'd be more than happy to work with you. No problem.
Well, you are serving my niche as well as far as midlife goes. And being
Yeah.
and being in midlife, we're already having all of these changes in our bodies and we're fatigued as it is and all of these things are going on. I don't have an autoimmune condition, but I can only imagine what that's like and how it's compounded on top of being in midlife. And what do you hear from women about that, dealing with both at the same time?
Well, it is definitely a challenge. Being in midlife with all the midlife changes of hot flashes and weight gain and hair loss and all of that fun stuff on top of on top of an autoimmune or vice versa. You have it first and then you go through all this stuff. It's like, oh, it's just it's overwhelming sometimes.
Mhm.
However, being able to find some real peace in your heart and in your life and get your energy back in balance really helps overall to be able to handle all of the midlife changes along with autoimmune. So it just needs little tips and tricks and proven foundational techniques that can help balance it all back out. So it's just easier.
If we back up a little bit and talk about autoimmune conditions a little more broadly, how do you define autoimmune?
Well, it is pretty broad, isn't it? For me, it's rheumatoid arthritis. I also have some thyroid issues that I had years before they even called it autoimmune.
Mhm.
And so they always say you usually get it in pairs, and they were like 20 years apart, but they still happened. And so autoimmune is just, to me, it's a condition that limits your ability to live your life fully. You're either limited on food or limited by pain or limited by doing the activities you used to always do. Physical activities like going out to ride a bike or go for a walk or swim or run or play with your kids on the floor. I mean, that was my son was about 9, and even though he wasn't really on the floor playing, he was still on the floor, and I couldn't get on the floor with him anymore. And that was hard because that's where kids spend a lot of time
Mhm.
on the floor and playing. So it changes your whole life. I couldn't walk up and down stairs. I could only do one step at a time. My energy was very low. And most people's are when you have an autoimmune condition. And then coupled with that, you have all the emotional aspects of it,
Right.
the depression and the overwhelm of, oh my God, this is my life now. Am I going to be able to live in chronic pain? I mean, I've had all these thoughts. And so I don't necessarily think it matters what diagnosis you have, excuse me, or what it's called. We all have the same feelings of, "Oh my god, this can't be happening to me."
Mhm. So if
So,
it's rheumatoid arthritis for you, what might it be for other women? What are some of the other autoimmune related conditions that you've come across in your conversations with women or the women that you're currently helping?
mhm. Well, lupus is one, fibromyalgia is one, celiac, of course, is one, and, I mean, I think there's over 300 or more. I don't even know the exact number, but there's a lot of different autoimmune conditions. Some of them are even, breathing, or I think MS is really considered an autoimmune condition. Yeah, there's a lot. So far, I've worked with a few women. Mainly, they've been with RA, but I've had other women that have thyroid issues and real breathing problems. And it doesn't really matter because a lot of the things that I teach and that I'll be sharing will help overall balance your energy. And when the energy system gets rebalanced, things start to fall back into place.
Mm-hmm.
And because the body is designed to heal itself, basically, it knows what to do. I mean, think about it. When we get a cut on our hand, we don't look at it and hope and do weird things over it to make it heal. It doesn't. You can just watch it heal. It heals all by itself because the body's innate wisdom knows what to do. And I believe strongly that we have that that it can work with autoimmune as well. I have improved my condition so much compared to what I was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
My food choices, energy work, mindfulness, and essential oils. And now I'm really working, like you stated before, I'm getting certified as a transpersonal energy healer, where we deal a lot with the emotional aspect of it. And that's huge for everything. Doesn't matter what you're doing in your life. When you're not comfortable in your own mind, you know what I'm saying? That when we have it, we block ourselves. We're our own worst enemy sometimes for doing something. Oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And I know that doesn't have to do with the autoimmune part, but it really does in a way, because sometimes when people get a diagnosis, they just go, okay, that's it. That's my life. There's nothing I can do about it, because basically that's what you hear from the doctors, that you're just going to keep getting worse and there's nothing you can do except for take more medicine. And I just wasn't on that page. I just kind of was like, I just, I don't think that's the route I want to go.
Yeah. Tell us, Susie, where it all started for you. Walk us through your journey and what your symptoms were initially and what got you to thinking, well, this isn't just your normal ache or pain.
Well, yeah, I knew that right off the bat, or very, very, very soon after I started having symptoms. It was one morning in 2000. I woke up and I saw my hand, my curled up fist laying on the pillow next to my face, and I couldn't open my fingers. And I was like, okay. So I kind of pried them open and I was like, all right, that was weird. And then as the day got on or went on, I just felt a little weird all over and just extra tired and kind of like buzzing. You know, just my body just felt funny. And then over the next few months or a few days and into weeks, I should say, I started developing severe pain in my hands, my wrists, my feet, my ankles. That's really where I saw it first. And it was scary. Had got to the point where I could barely stand up out of a chair, or lift my arms up above my head. I was in constant pain. And that's scary. That can throw your emotional self into panic mode when you're in constant pain and
Sure.
you don't know why. Yeah, it's very, very scary.
And that
So,
panic alone can just make everything worse.
and yeah, I started on the traditional doctor to doctor to doctor, and I did that for 18 months before I got a diagnosis, and finally was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And I'm so glad to hear a diagnosis. And nobody wants to have a diagnosis of anything, believe me. But when you don't know what's going on, that's really a lot scarier than at least having something to work with now. So it was a relief. And so I started down the traditional medicine route, and I felt better. The pain subsided greatly, but I was still in a lot of pain. And my right knee would give me trouble. Woke me up at night. And again, even on the medicine, I could only do one stair at a time. And I felt myself getting worse. Again, on the medicine, I was having constant flare ups and endless pain. And I just thought, this just can't be all. There's got to be more. And so my
Mhm.
intuition was really knocking on my shoulder saying, if I don't do something myself to take my health into my own hands, I'm just going to keep getting worse. And that's something we all need to know, is we have so much power over our own health. We should never, ever rely on another person or a certain medication to fix it all, because it won't. It won't. And plus, I didn't want to depend on medicine for the rest of my life. And I was tired of and doctors, I guess, doctors telling me that there was nothing I could do with my RA, that I was only going to get worse, and I was probably going to have a knee replacement in a few years.
Journey like seeing all these different doctors? How many did you see? What were their specialties? What were they testing you for?
Well, the first doctor I went to was a general practitioner, and she ran a battery of tests, everything you can think of. And she came back to the room and said, "You're perfect." And my heart sunk because you don't say that to someone that's in excruciating pain. And so that was my first experience with it, and it didn't really get better after that. So she referred me to a rheumatologist. Went to a rheumatologist. He ran the whole battery of tests, couldn't find anything wrong. So he referred me on to a neurologist. So I went to a neurologist. They did a whole bunch of tests, did a whole bunch of battery of things, couldn't find anything wrong. And I was just steadily getting worse. And so it's hard to stay positive and motivated when you keep getting, "You're fine, nothing's wrong. The tests
Mhm.
are showing nothing's wrong." And yeah, tests are good for some things. And I know that's what they're trained in. But I think I finally went and I thought I'm going to have to go to the Mayo Clinic because I'd already kind of exhausted my resources here, I felt like. So I thought I'm just going to go to the Mayo Clinics. But I didn't really have the energy. And I was looking through the phone book when we had phone books. This was 20 years ago.
Mhm.
We
Yep.
had to manually look things up. And I saw a doctor that said he had Mayo Clinic certified or trained or something like that. And he was right here in Kansas City where I live. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. That sounds like an easier option at this point. I'll do this next, and then I'll have to go to the Mayo Clinic. So I went to see him, and he was the best doctor. He was actually a neurologist, and he was the best doctor ever. Out of everyone I saw, because he was determined. He said, "I'm going to find out what's going on with you, and we're gonna get some answers here." And I hadn't heard any of them say that. They ran the tests, and they were like, "I don't know what to do. Why don't you go to this guy or that gal or this place?" And I was just like, wow. That kind of leave you hanging. He was really great, and he did. He diagnosed me with the rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, and then I started on the road to feeling better. And so I started on traditional medicine and an infusion shot called Remicade, and did that for about 4 or 5 years. But again, in that time, I was getting worse, and I was
Mm.
constantly had the flare ups. So I thought, gosh, this can't be my life. To have to go to the doctor every week, 8 weeks, and sit at the office for 3 hours, hooked up to an IV, pumping this medicine into me.
Yeah.
Ugh, that was not fun. So that's when I decided to take my health into my own hands, do some research, and I found some amazing practices, simple everyday practices that anybody can do. Now, I will clarify, these are simple, but they're not always easy. So we've got to keep that in mind, because one of the first things that I did was look into my food. What was I eating? Was there anything that I was eating that was contributing to my condition or to my pain or to my mood? And so I started on this food journey where I went, oh my gosh, I tried every diet there was. And I went from the standard American diet to vegetarian to vegan to raw. And, you know,
What did you learn about all of those different diets?
well, what I learned overall, and with the diets too, is there's no one size that fits all. That's why we have to be an active participant and be willing to try new things, find out what works for you and what doesn't. Because what I found out when I got to the raw stage, I found out or actually the vegan raw stage, I thought my body I felt really tired. I wasn't getting enough protein. I needed animal protein. And most of us do, but some people can live fine on a vegan diet or a raw diet and they thrive. But for me, when I added fish and eggs back into my mix of food choices, whew, I just immediately had more energy and felt better overall. So I think we just have to be willing to experiment and try. And one of the things that when I work with women is called a food elimination diet, because we won't know what's bothering us if there's something bothering us until we eliminate it from our diet. And it's simple. It only takes 15 to 20 days to eliminate like one food group like dairy. Let's say you eliminate it for 15 to 20 days completely. You can't cheat. Oh,
That's
no.
the hardest part.
That's the I know. That's the not easy part. It's simple,
Yeah.
just eat it, but it's not easy because it's your favorite foods and your body
Mhm.
craves them. Your body craves them after a while. And then you gradually add them back in. I know for me with dairy, that was my toughest thing. Oh, I fought it every step of the way. It took me months to completely eliminate it from my diet, but I'll tell you,
Oh.
once I completely eliminated dairy, I stopped having flare-ups.
Was it milk or cheese or what was it that was
Dairy and
bothering
meat.
you?
Dairy and meat. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And the cool thing is I stopped having flare-ups, and I've never, ever had one since, and that was
Oh,
over
wow.
50 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And are you still on medication?
I'm on a super duper low dose. So I'm not completely medicine free, but compared to where I was going for 3 hours in the office every week, and then I went to a weekly pen, and then I went to a pill, but I'm on a super, super low dose. And my
Mhm.
goal is to eventually be medication free.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Congratulations that you haven't had a flare and you figured it out. And as you said, it took a while, but we all like the quick fix. And sometimes it's in the form of of a pill, but
Absolutely.
other times we need to work a little harder to figure it out outside of the medicine, the pill.
Absolutely. Because I know
Yeah.
it by the time I got diagnosed, I was like, "I don't care what you do to me, just make the pain stop." You don't
Yeah.
care. You just it's it's not a good life to be in that chronic severe pain. It's not any fun at all. And so
No, not at
I
all.
was on pretty heavy medicine for a while. However, and it did take me a long time to figure out because I did it all on my own. I everything I did was on my own. And that's why I wanna mentor women now so they don't have to so it doesn't have to take them years to figure it out or, multiple attempts on all these different things. I can zero them in on exactly where to start, the steps to take to proceed forward, and that's my hope, to help as many people feel great again, even if they have autoimmune, so they can
So is
enjoy their lives.
Susie, when you went to see the neurologist in close to home by you, what kind of tests did that doctor do that was different from the rheumatologist to get to your diagnosis? Do you recall?
I don't I don't think there was that much difference, to be honest. He was just really well, his nurse called him a walking encyclopedia. So he likes to figure things out and get to the root cause of it. See, I think he's probably was one of the first functional medicine doctors because he really wanted to figure out what it was. But then once he figured out that wasn't his field, so I couldn't stay with him.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, it's really a joy when you find the diagnostician and a good one
yes,
at that.
yes.
And I've been in similar situations where I've had some muscle related issues and I've gone to a couple of neurologists and they just stopped, and I still had all of these issues, and they passed me along to a few other doctors, and I'm better, but I don't know that we've 100% figured out what my issue was, but I don't care. I'm better at this point, but to find
Yeah.
a doctor who is willing to listen and then dig and keep looking. What do you think was different about that doctor versus the other ones? What was different about him as far as his tenacity to try to find an answer for you? How would you compare and contrast some of the other doctors compared to this neurologist?
Well, he just really seemed to really care about me as a patient because even though he was ultra walking encyclopedia, super smart man, every time I went in, he would talk in layman's terms. He wasn't using these big medical terms and things like that. He talked to me like a real person. He could see that I was in pain. I think he really wanted to make a difference in my life and not just me. I'm sure all of his patients. And I'm not knocking all doctors. Please understand that. I think sometimes the medical field, they're trained in a certain area. And if they don't know it, then they pass them on, which is understandable. That's what
Mm.
you would do. So I understand that. However, I just something about him, he wasn't gonna give up. And he didn't until he got an answer, so
Mhm.
yeah.
How would you how would you talk to someone about using their intuition? Because you were very intuitive, your gut was talking to you saying, "This can't be my life." How would you kind of help somebody work through something like that? Like, to get them to think beyond just what the doctor told them?
Yeah, sometimes our intuition, it's really our guide in life, and I could look back at my life and go, "Oh, it was telling me not to do that, but I did it anyway." And
Mhm.
I'm sure we've all had experiences like that, or it's the
Yep.
opposite, do it," and I didn't do it, and I've regretted it ever since. So we really have to be in tune with our intuition, with our heart, and if something keeps coming up saying, "This is not right, something's not right," you don't have to know what's not right. I didn't know. I just knew that if I kept on the path that I was and didn't do anything, that I was just gonna continue to get worse. So, we don't always have to have the answer, but when something's tugging at you saying, "No, don't keep doing this," or "Find something else." Sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it's a voice, sometimes it's a sign. We keep seeing something, should try something different. Somebody mentions food, maybe you should try eating differently. And you're like, "Oh, no," because a lot of people don't believe that food can make a difference in your health. But I can tell you firsthand it does. And it did for me. And I've never regretted leaving dairy. I just found a replacement. And that's really the key because we're human. We like our little things. So I just found
Mhm.
a replacement and I'm good. I'm
Mhm.
good.
You found what works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really be in tune with your intuition. And sometimes we don't really know. We're like, did I just say that because I wanted to think it or whatever? But how I recommend,
Or or that's just midlife talking. You thought
yeah,
you said something or your brain was saying something, but you really don't remember saying it. That could just be midlife, Susie. Let's
yeah, that's
face it.
right. And then there's midlife. Right. That's a whole other story.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. But Rob, if it constantly keeps coming up, like, don't do that. Don't do that. You constantly get that feeling and it keeps coming up, even though you've decided, no, I'm going to do it this or I'm not going to do that. But then you question it again. That's your intuition that keeps coming up and saying, something's just not right here. Don't do that. And I always recommend too, don't make any big decisions when
Mm.
you're unsure. That's another part of your intuition. It's you're like, I'm gonna do this, and then something keeps making you feel like, no, maybe I shouldn't. Or your intuition is telling you, don't do it, don't do it. And you're like, yeah, but it's right. It's on signal and it's good. And so I'm going to do it. No, don't do it. Don't do it. That's your intuition. So if you have doubt, keep thrown like a wrench thrown into your thinking, that's your
Hmm.
intuition. And so
Yeah.
just don't do anything. Just don't make any decision until it becomes clear. That's the best advice I could give.
Mhm. Yeah. What did you learn about the medical community going through that journey as you were getting bounced around from doctor to doctor, and what were some of your observations?
Well, I think, like I said, I kind of felt like I was just another number. We ran the test and you're fine. So I don't know what else to do for you. And why don't you go see this person? And a series of that kept happening, and you just kind of feel like nobody really cares and nobody really wants to find out. They've done all they know how to do, and that's all they're going to do. And good luck with the next guy or woman or gal.
Mhm.
But yeah, and that doesn't feel good. And overall, we need the medical community. I'm not knocking the medical community at all. However, I think there needs to be more. Well, I'm sure I don't know if anybody's heard of functional medicine or a functional medicine doctor, but that is really the new medicine that's coming on the horizon. It's already here, really, but
Mhm.
it's well known. That is really the wave of the future, because functional medicine doctors look at the whole body, what you eat, what you think, how you move. They run the blood tests, they run the test. They look at the whole big picture, not just, oh, the tests are fine, so you must be fine. It's all in your head. Bye bye. And I've heard so many stories of people sharing that.
Mm.
I just got the same experience I did. I don't know what to do. Maybe this other doctor can help you. Good luck. And yeah. So overall, we need them, but they need to. I feel that the standard medical community needs to broaden their horizon to help all parts of a person, not just the symptom.
What's the I guess the I'll just put it this way. What's the worst thing that you had heard from a doctor in terms of how a doctor would talk with you about your symptoms? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think the worst thing I was having trouble with my right knee. And it still gives me trouble, but it not like it was. I can walk up and down stairs now with both steps at a time, so that feels good. But it was really disturbing how easily he said, "Oh, you're going to have that replaced in a couple of years." So,
Mm.
and I just thought, really? I don't know. And that was like 15 years ago.
So
Obviously, it wasn't that.
was the interpretation just live with it, live with the pain because you'll be getting
Yep.
rid of it in a few years because Susie, you're old. You're old and you're going to have a knee replacement because you're old. So just live with it for now until you get your knee replacement that'll last you 15 or 20 years and deal.
Mm.
That's my
So,
interpretation.
yeah, that you said it perfectly. That's really what I got from most of the traditional doctors was there's nothing you can do. There's no cure. There's no real treatment other than just let's take more medicine. Take more medicine. Try a
Mm.
different medicine. Take more of that, and then try a different medicine and take more of that. And so since I've actually gone way down on my medicine.
That's great. And you mentioned diet and elimination diets. Any other little quick tips that you'd like to give?
Yes, I would actually. When I eliminated dairy and I stopped having the flare-ups, man, talk about motivation. Was so excited. And I kept trying different things that kept eliminating things, gluten, dairy, sugars, oils. certain oils like vegetable oils and even some meats. Those are the big culprits
Mm.
of symptoms. And so those are the things you want to go through elimination diet. Well, I tried all those things and I didn't have any, I kind of plateaued at a certain point. Like I didn't find another big wow, like eliminating the dairy. However, in 2017, I discovered energy medicine. And energy medicine is an ancient practice, 3,000 years old. It's all about moving energies in the body so that the body can be realigned and it could function and flow better.
Mm.
And at this point, I was doing the food, and I could only do one step at a time. Once I learned energy medicine, I did daily energy work for 30 days, and I could walk up and down stairs again. I slept better. I had more energy. So much a difference. So
And
these are all things that I teach and share with women.
how would you define energy medicine? I can't say I've heard of that.
Well, again, it's an ancient practice. Have you heard of Reiki? I mean,
I've heard of that. Yep, yep, yep.
it's about moving energy. We're all electromagnetic. So rub your
Mhm.
hands together for it. And you do that and feel that, and then kind of hold them together, like about a couple inches apart.
Mhm.
Can you feel that?
I can. Yes.
Yeah. It's an electromagnetic energy. And that's what we are. We are
Yeah.
all energy.
And it's
And
not just my Apple Watch vibrating either.
that's right.
I can actually feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we are energy beings. And this is just a body. We're an energy being inside of it. And when energies get stuck or we have a traumatic experience in our life and we just can't stop thinking about it, or I mean, even 20, 30 years later, it's still there because it's a trapped energy in the body. And I believe a lot of these traumas that happen to us as children or even as adults, anytime in our life, really, can cause energy disruptions in the body. And it blocks energies from flowing. So we're not our best selves. And
Mm.
energy medicine can help to unblock and open and move energies through the chakras and the meridians and all these different energy pathways through the body. And the energy medicine is just that. It does, I don't know, you've probably heard of tapping before.
Mhm.
Tapping
Yep.
from it. It's very similar to that. That's a form of energy medicine. Tapping is to help emotionally move energy and physically. But it's just different. There's different movements or different postures or different exercises. Like I do what's called an energy routine where I do certain energy exercises daily that help keep my body in balance. And when I miss if I miss several days, which that doesn't happen, but I have did in the beginning, I was like, oh, I could tell a difference. And so I get back in my do my and they're simple. They take like 5 minutes to do a whole
Hmm.
series. So, but
That's
yeah,
interesting because yeah, I just interviewed a guest and did a recording with a guest. Her name is Audrey Gale, and she just wrote a fiction book called The Human Trial. However, a lot of her research that informed the book was around the work that many of the early scientists uh, conducted, a lot of their research in quantum physics. We were actually, anybody who knows me, I am not a left brain nerd by any means, but it was fascinating because we're talking about quantum physics and the fact that we're just big kind of blobs of energy. And and this was all spurred by her journey with her father. Well, first her dog was ill, then her father became ill, but I'll just say there's a energy modality that ended up helping both her dog and her father. Both the dog and her father had cancer, but they did not die from cancer. They actually ended up in remission from this type of, again, I'll just call it energy modality. I won't get into specifics. But yeah, so we were having this conversation about quantum physics and energy and all of that, and how much it does lend itself to disease.
Absolutely. It absolutely does. And it's scientifically based, just like you said. It's actually moving more into the natural flow of healing. A lot of these energy modalities are moving into it because they work.
Yeah, it was really fascinating about how this modality for both her dog and her dad, it worked for both of
Yeah,
them in
I
terms
know.
of healing. Yeah, so there's a
Yep.
lot there's a lot we just don't know beyond
There's
the
so much.
medicine. But how do you counsel women to incorporate more the Western versus the less traditional kind of maybe some of the things that you're doing? How do you talk to them about both sides of the coin?
Well, I just share my story, really. I've lived it. And so I just share my story, and some people look at you cross-eyed and wonder why would food make any difference? Or what is energy medicine? That's crazy stuff. I don't know what that is. And but it's people want to know or they don't. And so I just share my story. It's really how I get it across. And like I said, I live it every day. And I do the practices every day.
Mhm.
I'm doing everything I teach and share, I do. So I'm not would never want to share or do something that I don't do myself because it's just not as authentic and people catch on. But it's funny, a lot of people that have been diagnosed have already gone down similar roads that I have because they don't want to settle with it either. But then there's newly diagnosed women, or maybe they've been diagnosed for a long time, but never even knew they had options until now. And because 20 years ago, I didn't really have any options.
Mhm.
And 5 years into it, then I kind of learned about the food. And then just the last few years, you keep hearing functional medicine and then energy work, and all these things start to open up. And so it's really becoming more mainstream, I should say. So it's not as untraditional. It's going to be eventually. This will be the traditional healing methods. I
Yeah.
believe in my.
Well, it at least opens up more options for people
Ah,
or finding ways to combine Western and more non-pharmaceutical, I guess, options, we'll just say. Some
Non-traditional. Yeah, I know what you mean. And really, I still need my medicine right now. I still
Right.
need to take some pain medicine. I just do. But my pain level from where it was, like off the scales to minimal, that's where I'm at. So
Mm.
again, eventually that's my plan is to be totally off. And I think I'll be there because I still feel like or I know I'll be there. Because I still feel like there's something kind of stuck that I haven't quite worked through. And that's why I'm going into this emotional aspect because I
Mm.
think that's just gonna unlock a lot for me. And then I'll be able to help other people find their opening to their own healing. And that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we all go through things in life, especially when we get to midlife too. We've seen a lot, and
Yeah.
hopefully the bright spot of that is that we can impart our wisdom as we've achieved this part of life and still alive to talk about it. But Susie, what would you say is the silver lining from all of what you've been through personally?
Well, I have to say, I the silver lining is where I'm at right now. If I would not have listened to my intuition 15 plus years ago and really started to look into how I can contribute to my own health, then I wouldn't be here where I'm at now because now I go on frequent walks when the weather cooperates. If it's too hot or if it's too cold, sometimes those don't work for me. But I do daily low impact exercises. I eat really super healthy and I have enough energy now to run my blog and my autoimmune mentoring business. And so that's very exciting. And I think the best part of it is that I didn't listen to all those people that said, you can't do anything to feel better. You're only going to get worse. You're going to have knee replacements. You're going to have this. You're going to have that. Take more medicine. And I thought that basically that I couldn't improve my RA at all, but I have improved my RA, and I have less pain now and more energy than I had 20 years ago. That's really exciting.
That is exciting. And I can't tell you how much I love these stories of one, perseverance and advocating for yourself, but two, as
Yes.
a girl, I always love stories about female entrepreneurship. So, Susie, why don't you tell us about where people can find you and a little bit about your website, your blog, etc. Tell us about that.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Well, my website is called bloominginmidlife.com. We're going to have a link in the show notes so you'll be able to click right to it. And then I have a little free gift. It is called Your Autoimmune Relief Bundle 5 Simple Practices to Lessen Pain and Find Your Daily Calm. And so that's just some of the things that I teach so you can benefit from them right away. And one thing I really want to stress to everybody is when you get a diagnosis, remember you are not your diagnosis. It is just something somebody told you. You have so much control and options. You have so many options to take your own health into your own hands. And I just encourage you, whether you contact me or you find a functional medicine doctor or someone else, we have so many options to feel better. We don't have to say, okay, this is my life now. We don't have to do that. It's kind of back here now in my life. It's like, oh yeah, oh that thing. I've got that already thing. Sometimes it bothers me, but this is my life. I have full of energy and ready to go. And yeah, so just all
It's a good feeling. It's a good
yeah,
feeling, isn't it?
it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
very good.
And I like that you said that the diagnosis shouldn't define you. In fact, I have a friend who a few years ago was diagnosed with a rare myeloma. And I had said to him, this will not define you, but it will define what you do afterwards. And I do believe that that's what happens to us, whatever it is, a diagnosis, other kind of trauma or loss, any of that. I don't think it defines you because, as they say, nobody likes a martyr. And
Yeah,
to
sure.
persevere and make something of it
Yeah,
is formidable and definitely respectable. So it's
absolutely. I couldn't have done any of this if so. Actually, there's a lot of good came out of it. Strangely enough. But I
yeah,
know, you mean I had known people that they had some issues, didn't know what was going on, but once they got diagnosed, it's like they became it, and they just okay, and they did kind of have that, and it's normal. I'm not. I mean, I felt like that at first too, but then I was like, no, I don't have to settle, and that's what I just want to get across. You don't have to settle for the diagnosis as a life sentence. Be willing to try new things. Be willing to be open to things you've never even heard of before. I never heard of energy medicine before. And wow, it changed my life in a big
hmm
way. Just
yeah.
be
So I like to think too that things happen in divine order for better or for worse.
yes.
But I do think things
Exactly.
happen for a reason, and we may not always know right away what the reason
Uh,
is when we're in it and slugging through it. But
That's right.
eventually, I think
Right.
we figure it out. However long we'll be on this earth, we hopefully can figure it out. But Susie, thank you so much. This has been enlightening, and I love the fact that even though autoimmune conditions are a heavy topic, you certainly made it a light and enjoyable conversation for us. So I want to thank you for that.
Wonderful. I'm glad.
Yeah,
That's
no, it
yeah, doesn't have to be heavy. I mean, if we want to live in the heaviness, then that's a choice. And I chose not to live in the heaviness. And
well,
it changed my life.
Well, amen to that, sister. Thank you. Thank you so much, Susie. And thank you, everyone, for listening. This is another episode of the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. I am your host, Laura Nozica, and everyone stay well. Take care. Oh my goodness, that's a wrap on another compelling story. Thanks for listening to the Desperate for a Diagnosis podcast. If you would like more information about today's guests or to find out more about Laura, me, go to desperateforadiagnosis.com. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow show updates and healthcare news on the podcast's Facebook page. If you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any questions, advice, or suggestions for our guests, please email me at lauramarie@desperateforadiagnosis.com.